First of all, I do want to talk to you a little bit about permissions because you guys have already asked me about that. So the difference between a moderator interface and a participants interface is now you guys have this full set of tools here within the participants panel right next to where it says main room. So look in the white area, find main room, and look at all of these tools. All right, so let's talk about permissioning. I want you guys to really tune in and listen to this because this is important. There are a couple of ways that you can give and take away permissions. First of all, when you create your session on the LearnNowBC portal, you have the option of allowing participants to come in with their permissions. The 4 permissions that they will come into the session with are audio, video, chat, and whiteboard. Remember, if you want them to be able to use their audio and their video while you're talking, you need to go up and activate the multiple talkers. And again, that's going to be under the options menu up in the audio and video area. Take a look at that and notice that you have maximum simultaneous talkers ability. You can click on that and you can change that. Please don't change it to anything less than 1 because I want to be able to allow maximum simultaneous talkers in this room, okay? Or less than 2. I want to have multiple talkers activated. So if you have created your session with permissions on, that means that students will be able to use audio, video, chat, and whiteboard. So earlier we had the question, can you turn off that private chatting? Absolutely. If you don't want your participants, in this example, Emma, Dominique, and Jacob, to be able to privately chat, you're just going to go right up here and click on the chat permission, and that will keep them from privately chatting. They will still be able to chat with the moderator only. They will not be able to chat with each other. So you're going to manage your session through permissions. If you have your class and all of a sudden your students do something like this and do a big scribble on the board without missing a beat, you may want to come over here and remove their whiteboard tools so nobody can even write on the board. So you can manage globally what you do here. Now let me just repeat what I just said, okay? This toolbar will allow you to globally manage your participants' permissions. So if I clicked on the microphone, you guys feel free to click on those. You won't hurt anything right now. Notice that if I click on the microphone, notice the red X that appears on it. That means that students will not be able to use the talk. Okay? If you click on the video camera, that means that students will not be able to use the video camera. All right. So this is how you globally manage permissions. You can also do the same thing under the options menu. You can globally manage them there as well. Now, the reason why these last 2 have X's on them, that is because they are not giving to participants as a default. This is application sharing and web tour. So these are not default tools that your students will come to class with. However, if you want to open the ability up for them to use those, you simply click on them. It will remove the red X, and then everybody will have those permissions. All right? Now, I want you to practice giving and taking away permissions for yourself. So not only can you globally manage participants, now let me back up and just recap. These are only for participants. They are not going to affect a moderator. And right now we're all moderators, so they are not going to affect you whatsoever. You can individually manage your own permission. So individually manage moderators. Find your own name in the participants window. Move to the right of your name and find your own options menu and begin taking away some of your permissions. I want you guys to practice that because there are going to be circumstances where you may want to take away everybody's whiteboard tools. So if you remove everybody's whiteboard tools, but then you want Paige to be able to interact on the whiteboard, then you're going to need to give Paige her whiteboard tools. Okay, and so therefore I would find Paige's name. I would come over here and I would reinstate Paige's whiteboard tools. And she would be the only one that would be able to interact on the whiteboard. The rest of you would not have your whiteboard tools. All right, so go ahead and take away some of your tools. You'll know that you've taken them away because it will show up next to your name with a red X on it. Just make sure you give that tool back once we're finished. Now let's take a look at this scenario here. Sophia is the moderator. Okay, so she has managed permissions. First of all, she has taken away one of the global permissions. She has removed everybody's whiteboard tools. So Dominique, Emma, and Jacob cannot use any whiteboard tools. They can't collaborate on the whiteboard. Individually, she has also removed Dominique's chat privileges. So everybody else will be able to chat except for Dominique. Emma, she has given individually the two tools that are typically not default tools, application sharing and web tour. So Emma has the permission to use these non-default tools. So basically the tools Emma will have is audio, video, chat. Nobody has the whiteboard tools. Everybody else does not have application share and web tour, but Emma has them. Notice she has them because they show up next to her name without a red X, meaning that that is a non-default tool that has been given to her. Okay, Jacob has had a default tool removed. He's had his audio privilege removed, but he has been given the permission to close caption. So that's how you decipher who has what in a class. Does anybody have any questions about that so far? Susan, what's your question?
So you were saying that when students come in as participants, they all have those four permissions already given to them, the ones you were talking about that were globally. There's nothing that I need to do in order to give them the permissions like you used to be able to do it on the old version?
Let me clarify that, Susan. You're exactly right. But it all depends on how you created your session. There is an option when you create your session that you have to check off that says, yes, I want my students to come in with their permission. So if you have selected that, then your students will automatically come into the session with those four tools. For instance, today you came into class with those four tools, so you were basically coming in like your students would be. And you had those four tools that were available to you. Okay. Yes, you can edit your session settings after the fact, just like I taught you. You can take them away, or you can take them and give them globally, or you can individually manage. Michelle. Go ahead, Susan. You had another question?
Yeah, I have set up a classroom for a year through LearnNowBC. Would I have had to have done that at the initial setting up of this classroom, or does it happen every time I start a new session, go on to a new session when I log on, click onto the moderator's link?
So if you've created your session long term and you created it with no permissions, I believe, Raheem, she can go in and edit that. Correct? I think I remember seeing something on the LearnNowBC portal that they can go in and edit, but we'll get Raheem to clarify that for us.
That is correct. So if you set up your room, a long-term room, for a period of 1 year, whatever your settings you had the day you created it is the settings that it will have. So if you did not select the grant all permissions, then every time you come into your room, you will have to grant those permissions to all your participants. However, at the day that you did set up your meeting, you did select that box, then everyone coming in will have all of those permissions. If you have to go back and modify your room, you can go back to LearnNowBC, click on your room, edit the room, and you can select or deselect that option, and then update the room, and those will carry over into your Collaborate rooms.
Thank you, Raheem. And I do want to point out what Clarissa just asked me, because I used to be a virtual educator for minors, so that when I created my sessions, my session that was basically my virtual classroom for the year, I created it without permissions because I didn't want my students to be able to come into my virtual classroom unsupervised. So think about that. If I invite Debbie to a classroom and we both have video cameras and we have the ability to text and chat and we're not supervised, boy, Debbie and I could get in a lot of trouble, okay? So you might want to think about that when you are working with minors and they have access to your room that would be open the entire year. So let's see, Leanne says, can you add moderators to a class and send them their own moderator link? Again, that's going to be Raheem. Just to clarify, you guys, LearnNowBC is kind of a unique portal that was built specifically for you guys. So even though it has a lot of the same things that I'm familiar with how I create my sessions, yours is a little bit different that I'm just vaguely familiar with. So that's why Raheem is here to answer any questions about your portal. So Raheem, can they go in and add moderators to a class and then send them their own moderator link?
Yes. When you do go and modify your room, and if you do add moderators, the LearnNowBC system will send out an automated email to all your moderators, or the new moderators that you've added, with their own personal link in there. And what I mean by personal link is when your moderator clicks on the collaborate link, they will enter the room with their name, with their full name that they have on LearnNowBC, or the ones that you've added. Is that clear enough? Does that answer your question?
Yep, she says thank you. All right, you guys, we've got to move on. We've got lots more to cover, and we're running out of time. Susan, what's your question?
Sorry, it's the same thing about permissions. I just want to clarify. So when I come on, as long as there isn't an X on top of the microphone or the video camera, that means everybody has permission. I don't have to go into each one separately into their option menu and give them permission.
That's right. So I'm glad that you did ask that question, because it's always good to clarify that. So if you have come into the room and there is no red X on it, so if you have created your sessions with permissions, this is what it's going to look like. You will come into your room, it will look just like this, and that indicates that your students all have permissions. If you have created your room and you did not want them to have permissions, there'll be red X's all the way across. And then if you want to give them permissions globally, you just click on the tool. It will remove the red X, and it will mean that all of your students will now have that tool. But of course, you can go in and individually manage those as well. Does that clarify it, Susan? Okay, perfect. I got a happy face from Susan, so good. I'm glad you asked that question, because it's important for you guys to understand your permissions.